Good morning, students. We are continuing the chapter government budget, and today we will read about budgetary deficit. Budgetary deficit is of three types: revenue deficit, fiscal deficit, primary deficit. First of all, revenue deficit. It is excess of total revenue expenditure of the government over total revenue receipts. Revenue deficit is equal to revenue deficit is equal to total revenue expenditure minus total revenue receipts. So, revenue deficit includes such transactions that affect current income and current expenditure of the government, and it signifies that government's own earning is insufficient to meet normal functioning of government. जो गवर्नमेंट के नॉर्मल फंक्शंस हैं, जो गवर्नमेंट की लाइबिलिटीज़ हैं, उनको पूरा करने में भी गवर्नमेंट एबल नहीं है, उसके रिसोर्सेज ऑफ रेवेन्यू लेस हैं देन एक्सपेंडिचर, करंट एक्सपेंडिचर भी उसका पूरा नहीं हो रहा है. इट इज़ इंडिकेशन ऑफ रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट. एंड व्हाट आर द रेमेडियल मेजर्स? अ हाई रेवेन्यू डेफिसिट वांट्स द गवर्नमेंट ईदर टू curtail its expenditure or increase its taxes and other sources of revenue like non-tax receipts. Main remedies are: government should raise rate of taxes, especially on rich people, and levy new taxes on such things which are harmful for people, and just like drugs or such type of things which are harmful for liquor for people. So, government should levy high taxes on these, and government should try to reduce its expenditure and avoid unnecessary expenditure on people. So, implication: revenue deficit implies that spending is beyond the means. This results in borrowing. Loans are paid back with interest. This increases revenue expenditure, leading to greater revenue deficit. Its main implications are reduction of assets. कि इसका result क्या है, इसका complication क्या है, इसका implication क्या है. It is said to be implication, and its implications are that reduction of assets. Revenue deficit indicates dis-saving on government account because the government has to make the covered gap by drawing upon capital receipts either through borrowing or through disinvestment by selling its assets. Second is inflationary situation. Since borrowed funds from capital account are generally used to meet consumption expenditure of the people, then it leads to inflationary situation in the economy with all its side effects. So, revenue deficit may either in increasing government liabilities or in reduction of government assets. So, revenue deficit implies a repayment burden. If government borrows from any source, it has to repay it back, and it increases its liability. Then more revenue deficit. It implies more revenue deficit. Large borrowings will increase debt burden due to repayment liability and interest payments. This may lead to larger revenue deficit in future. Then it increases burden of taxes. It leads to repayment burden in future without capital formation. Capital formation नहीं होगी, इससे सिर्फ repayment का burden बढ़ेगा and people will be imposed higher taxes, and और इसका burden लोगों पर भी बढ़ेगा क्योंकि higher taxes impose किए जाएंगे for more revenue. So, these are the implications or effects of revenue deficit. Second is fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is defined as excess of total budget expenditure over total budget receipts, excluding borrowings during a fiscal year. In simple words, fiscal deficit is nothing but total amount of borrowings of the government during that period. A large deficit means a large amount of borrowing. यानी कि fiscal deficit is exactly equal to total borrowings. Fiscal deficit is a measure how the government needs to borrow from the market to meet its expenditure when its sources are inadequate. So, fiscal deficit, how can we write the formula? Fiscal deficit fiscal deficit is equal to total budget expenditure minus total budget receipts. अब ये जो टोटल बजट एक्सपेंडिचर है इसमें दोनों आ जाएंगे, रेवेन्यू प्लस कैपिटल, दोनों एक्सपेंडिचर इसमें इंक्लूडेड है. इसी तरह से टोटल बजट रिसीट्स, इसमें भी रेवेन्यू रिसीट एंड कैपिटल रिसीट बोथ आर इंक्लूडेड, both receipts are included in it. So, fiscal deficit is equal to total expenditure minus total receipts minus borrowing. Minus borrowing. So, it is exactly equal to borrowings. So, if we add borrowing in total receipts, fiscal deficit is 0. Clearly, fiscal deficit gives borrowing requirements of the government, and borrowing includes not only accumulated debt but amount of loan with interest, which means large burden of interest payment and repayment of loan in future. So, safe limit of fiscal deficit is considered 3% to 5% of GDP. So, students, that's all for today. Thank you.